Hey now, what's going on everyone? Back with another year in wrestling video. This is my series of videos on the year in wrestling. I'm talking about 1991. This is part 3 of 1991, and I'll go all the way up to 2015. So, I'm going to kick it off talking about WWF SummerSlam 91 held at Madison Square Garden in New York City. It was a very good pay-per-view. I'm not saying all the matches were great, but the crowd, and because it was held at Madison Square Garden in New York City, made SummerSlam 91 a great show because of the crowd and the fans. First match on the pay-per-view was a 6-man tag. That's not the first match listed. Get down. Goddamn cat. Knock the camera over. Can't go up there. First match was a 6-man tag. Ricky Steamboat. He returned back to the WWF after his 1989 NWA WCW run. He returned back in 91. He was not on WrestleMania 7, and he was only on SummerSlam 91. In his return, it was only like a couple months back in the WWF, and then he left again to go back to WCW in November 91. Ricky Steamboat, British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and the Texas Tornado were teaming up, and they defeated the team of the Warlord and Power and Glory. Another match, there were many matches. Up next, I'll talk about the Natural Disasters defeated the team of the Bushwhackers. And during that match, I believe at the end, or during it, Andre the Giant came out and was in the Bushwhackers corner, and Andre was on his, what do they call them? God damn it. Crutches. He was on his, he had 2 crutches still attached to his arms. He was in bad shape. He wasn't wrestling anymore. He just accompanied the Bushwhackers to ringside. It was good to see Andre at SummerSlam 91. And after the match with the Natural Disasters, or maybe it was after, I think it was after the match, Andre the Giant hit Earthquake with his crutch, because before SummerSlam 91, I believe Earthquake sat and crushed Andre the Giant and did his finisher on him, where he bounced off both ropes and then sit on somebody. Up next was Virgil versus Ted DiBiase. They were still feuding. They had a match at WrestleMania 7, and Virgil defeated Ted DiBiase this time by pinfall in 13 minutes, 11 seconds. In other matches, you had the Big Boss Man defeat the Mountie in a, what was it called? I think it was called Jailhouse match. The loser had to spend one night in a New York City jail. The Mountie lost. Big Boss Man handcuffed him. The New York City police officers threw him in the paddy wagon, and he went off to jail. Then during SummerSlam 91, the Mountie was shown in jail, getting his picture taken, getting his fingerprints taken. And then they even showed the Mountie in the cell, and it was funny as hell. I laughed out loud. You had a cellmate, some crazy person come up to the Mountie and basically it sounded like a gay guy. And I have nothing against gay people. I'm for gay marriage, and I support gays and lesbians. Anyways, sounded like a gay guy to me. Came up to the Mountie and said, "Oh, I bet you look good in leather," or something like that. And it was funny, and the Mountie started freaking out behind the bars, and he started screaming like a little girl. So that was entertaining. After the jailhouse match, you had IRS make his WWF pay-per-view debut. IRS defeated Greg the Hammer Valentine. The Legion of Doom were challenging the Nasty Boys for the tag team titles. This was I believe is a no disqualification match. So there was a lot of brawling going on the outside of the ring. The Legion of Doom win the WWF tag team titles for the first time ever. They win them. And that was great. And they got a huge pop when they won the tag team titles in MSG. Another great match. Another title change on SummerSlam 91. Bret Hart was challenging Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. And Bret Hart defeated Mr. Perfect and became the new Intercontinental Champion. That got a great pop. And Bret winning the Intercontinental title kick-started his singles career. And that started a big push for Bret Hart. And he became a big star after he won the Intercontinental title for the first time. And then he became a bigger star in 92 when he'd win the WWF title for the first time and the Intercontinental title again at WrestleMania 8. So after Bret Hart won the IC title, you had the main event. Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior defeated Sergeant Slaughter and Colonel Mustafa. Colonel Mustafa was the Iron Sheik. And they were with General Eggman, or whatever the hell his name was. General somebody. After the main event, Sid Justice was the referee. Sid Justice, everybody knows, it was Sid Vicious. I don't know why the WWF had to change his name. I guess they didn't like Vicious because it was his name in WCW. After Hogan and Warrior defeated Sergeant Slaughter and Colonel Mustafa, you had the match made in heaven, the wedding of Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Miss Elizabeth was held on SummerSlam 91 to close the pay-per-view. That was great to watch and a great moment. And one more thing about SummerSlam 91, they did a backstage interview or segment, just a backstage segment with Bobby the Brain Heenan holding the NWA WCW Old World title that Ric Flair held for many years in WCW. Bobby Heenan was holding the World Heavyweight Championship belt that WWE just retired in 2014. Anyways, Bobby Heenan was holding the World Heavyweight Championship, and he knocked on Hulk Hogan's door of the Hulk Hogan's dressing room door. He knocks on it and says something like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like, "Mr. Hogan, this is Bobby the Brain Heenan on behalf of the real world's champion Ric Flair." And then he went on and said something like, "Ric Flair challenges you to a match and he is the real world's champion." And then Hulk Hogan slams the door on Bobby Heenan. Hulk Hogan was never shown on camera in the segment, but he slammed the door on Bobby Heenan. The World Heavyweight Championship fell to the concrete. Bobby Heenan had to pick it up, and he was very angry. He was very upset, and it was super funny to watch. Bobby Heenan always cracked me up. The guy's a genius. A genius. The guy is as funny as any comedian in the world. The stuff he'd come up with on commentary and the stuff he'd say on primetime wrestling was genius. So, that was funny as hell. Bobby Heenan had to pick up the World Heavyweight Championship and then start banging on Hogan's door and saying, "You will respect Ric Flair, the real world's champion, and how dare you slam the door," and stuff like that. Okay. That was SummerSlam 91. SummerSlam 91 was one of my favorite pay-per-views of 1991, along with Survivor Series 91. Also a great pay-per-view, and it was great because a lot of the backstage interviews they did with Piper on Survivor Series 91 and Ric Flair. And The Undertaker also winning the championship for the first time. So, now I'll talk about Clash of the Champions that took place in what year? 91. September 5th, 1991. Clash of the Champions 16 took place. First match was a Georgia Battle Royal. I believe it was 20 men in it. El Gigante won the Battle Royal. That was pretty awful. El Gigante could not work and could barely move in the ring. But he was a giant, so it made sense that he won the Battle Royal, but no one cared. I was not an El Gigante fan as a kid. Second match was very good, I thought. It was a light heavyweight title tournament semi-final match. Brian Pillman defeated Bad Street. Bad Street was a masked man, part of the Fabulous Freebirds. I don't know who he was under the mask, but he was a decent worker, I thought. And Brian Pillman in this match against Bad Street at Clash of Champions 16, Brian Pillman put on a hell of a performance. He went balls to the wall. He went balls out. He took it and brought everything he had. I mean, he did a dive through the second rope, and he landed on his chest on the concrete floor and on the mat. He basically, the front of his whole body basically landed almost face first into the guardrail. So Brian Pillman, he was great in the ring. And if you want to see a great Brian Pillman match, check it out. Clash of Champions 16 against Bad Street. I thought it was a good match on the show. Wasn't the best Brian Pillman match I ever seen, but it was a good match against the Mask Man Bad Street. Up next, Ricky Morton defeated Mike Graham, and no one cared, trust me. They're two good workers, but nobody cared. U.S. Champion, U.S. Heavyweight Champion, Sting. I believe he just won a U.S. title tournament to become the new U.S. Champion, because Lex Luger had to vacate the U.S. title because he won the world title. So Sting won the tournament and became the new U.S. Heavyweight Champion. Sting defeated Johnny B. Bad. And during this match, a giant gift box came out to the ring, was sitting on the ramp, and it was another gift box for Sting. Abdullah the Butcher and a lot of people were behind giving these gift boxes to Sting over and over and over. And it was Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack returned to WCW, a.k.a. Mick Foley. For you people that are stupid enough to not know that Cactus Jack was Mick Foley in WCW. Anyways, he was in WCW in '89. In very early parts of 1990, it did not work out. But he came back in '91, and he came out of the box, out of the gift box, at Clash of Champions 16, and he started attacking Sting, and he destroyed Sting. Sting was laid out on the floor, on the mat. Cactus went up to the second turnbuckle, jumped off it, hit his big elbow onto Sting. That was awesome to watch. And that was a good reintroduction, whatever the word is. It was a good restart for Cactus Jack in WCW in '91. Have him attack the world champion Sting and look very strong as a heel. And after Clash of Champions 16, Sting, I believe is November '91, or maybe October, maybe September, I don't know the month, but it's one of those months. Sting worked with Cactus Jack and they had a Falls Count Anywhere match on a WCW show, and it was a great match. And Cactus was him and Sting had great matches together. And Cactus at the time was hanging out with Abdullah the Butcher. After Sting was attacked by Cactus Jack, you had the Fabulous Freebirds defeat Todd Champion and Firebreaker Chip. It was an okay match. Freebirds were old and they should not have been wrestling anymore. Michael Hayes was out of shape and he should not have been in the ring in '91. Ron Simmons defeated the Diamond Stud up next. And the Diamond Stud, as I said in my last video, was Scott Hall. And he really resembled very early trades of Razor Ramon. The Diamond Stud did a lot of stuff that Razor Ramon started doing. So WCW really dropped the ball letting the Diamond Stud go. But I'm sure WCW and Dusty Rhodes or whoever it was in control, they thought they let Scott Hall go and that WWF would not come up with anything for him. And Scott Hall came up with Razor Ramon himself. He took basically a lot of the character from Scarface, Tony Montana, Al Pacino's character. That's where Razor Ramon came from. At least that's what I heard Scott Hall say in a shoot interview, that he got the Razor Ramon idea and the gimmick from Tony Montana. Up next, you had Van Hammer, heavy metal Van Hammer, very 80s, stupid gimmick. Came out with a guitar that had pyro coming out of the top of it. Very 80s gimmick, 80s hairband gimmick. It was stupid. Van Hammer defeated Terrence Taylor. And Terrence Taylor was Terry Taylor. Television champ, stunning Steve Austin defeated the Z-Man. Up next, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko. Arn Anderson had a lot of tag team partners and was a great tag team wrestler, one of the best of all time, and held a lot of tag team titles with a lot of his partners. I mean, I'm going to just say Arn Anderson, I'm going to come up with a few names here. He was a great tag team and partners with Ole Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, Bobby Eaton, Paul Roma. Arn Anderson even teamed with Ric Flair in 1990, and they made a great team. So you put Arn Anderson team with Barry Windham a lot. You put Arn Anderson with any partner, and he can make it work. The guy is a great, great worker. And a great tag team wrestler is Arn Anderson. So Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko defeated Rick Steiner and Bill Kazmaier to win the vacated WCW World Tag Team titles. Up next, I'll talk about Clash of the Champions 17 from Savannah, Georgia on November 19th, 1991. This was one of my favorite Clash of Champions. All the matches were not good, but the crowd was great. Watch Clash of Champions 17 on the WWE Network, and it was a great crowd. They were hot. They were into a lot of the matches. And they were just loud, and they were a great crowd during the show, especially during Sting versus Rick Rude, and they were great during the World Tag Team title match that I'll talk about. First match was Big Josh. As I said before in my last video, Big Josh was Doink the Clown for, I think, 1 year in the WWF, and then they got rid of him. And someone else played Doink. Big Josh defeated Thomas Rich. He was Tommy Rich in a lumberjack match to kick off the Clash 17. Then you had Bobby Eaton defeat Firebreaker Chip. And Firebreaker Chip, he was an okay worker. The guy didn't last and stay in the wrestling business long. I only saw him in 91 and 92, and then he was gone. He had a lame gimmick. He had a firefighter gimmick. He was playing a firefighter. It was stupid. And him and, what's the other guy's name? Firebreaker Chip, and what was his partner's name? Todd Champion. Their team, they're from WCW Special Forces. I don't know what the hell that meant. Todd Champion was playing like a Marines type gimmick, and Todd Champion was a firefighter. Bad gimmicks, but they were okay workers. So Bobby Eaton wins against Firebreaker Chip. Up next, Tom Zink defeated the Diamond Stud. The Diamond Stud was Scott Hall. And when Clash of Champions 17 opened up, I believe they did an interview segment, and Sting came out and talked, and then a giant box came out, and it was another gift box for Sting. And Medusa came out of the gift box, started crawling on the floor on her hands and knees, started rubbing up and down Sting's chest to distract him. And Medusa then, after, this is, Clash of Champions is from November. I should be talking about Halloween Havoc, which is from October, before this Clash of Champions 17, but I'll just talk about Halloween Havoc on my next video of 91. So I'll keep talking about Clash of Champions because I already started. Clash of Champions 17. Medusa rubbed his chest to distract the Stinger. And then you have, coming out of the box, the World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger attacks his former friend Sting. He attacks him, clips him on the knee, takes his knee out, starts slamming his leg up and down the ramp. Injures Sting really bad. Sting had a previous knee injury. In 1990, he had knee surgery and reconstructive surgery on his knee. So Luger injures Sting to start the Clash. They have a camera on Sting in the ambulance going to the hospital. So then they are discussing, is Sting going to be back to defend his U.S. title against Ravishing Rick Rude? Will he come back, or will he have to forfeit the U.S. title? We will find out. And when the show is going on, they even had Eric Bischoff, who was only a announcer at the time. Eric Bischoff even called from the hospital on the telephone And Jim Ross was asking Eric, how is Sting? Is he okay? And then he says, does he know he has to come back here or he'll forfeit the title to Rick Rude? And then Sting was in the background. He started yelling. He says, I'm coming back right now. And I'm going to come back and kick Rick Rude's butt or something like that. And so Sting leaves the hospital. And they claimed Sting, I guess he did steal an ambulance because he came back driving the ambulance. And he came into the parking lot, and he was there in time. And then the referee started a 10. The ref started a 10 count, and Sting got back in the arena before the 10 count was up. Got up on the rampway. He was still injured. His tights were cut off. He had his knee wrapped up. And then Sting met Rick Rude on the rampway. And they started brawling and beating the crap out of each other, and it was awesome. The crowd popped. The crowd loved it, especially when Sting's music hit and he came into the arena and they saw him. Sting was super over with the crowd and the young kids and the fans. So Sting brawls with Rick Rude on the ramp. The match didn't not even start yet. It was not even in the ring. Sting gorilla presses Rick Rude, slams him on his back on the ramp. That had to hurt like hell. Definitely looked like it hurt Rick Rude, and doing spots like that, getting slammed on your back after being press slammed, and then getting slammed on your back on a rampway that did not have much to give, definitely did not help Rick Rude, and probably made his back injury worse and made him have to retire early, because he did retire early in 1994. So Sting and Rick Rude put on a great match for the U.S. title. The commentary was great from Jim Ross. He was going insane, and he was really great, and Jim Ross really added to this U.S. title match. There was a lot of drama in it. Sting was still injured, but he's fighting back. He had heart. He wanted to keep the U.S. title. And he did not want to quit and forfeit the U.S. title. So he was defending it like a man, even though he was injured. And watch Clash of Champions if you have not seen it. Clash of Champions 17 from November 19th, 1991. Watch Sting versus Rick Rude. That is a great match. Crowd's into it. Jim Ross is great on commentary, and it's just awesome stuff, and it's awesome to watch. Coming from me, I really enjoyed it, so I'm telling you, check out Rick Rude versus Sting from Clash of Champions 17 if you have the network. It's awesome. It's a pretty short match, but it's great. It's very good stuff. Up next, you had television champion Stunning Steve Austin defending the TV title against PN News. And Steve Austin retained, thank God, because PN News should have never got a title run, and he did not. Thank God. PN News was awful. He was a fat guy wearing lime green and trying to rap on a microphone, and his stupid catchphrase was annoying as hell, and it got on my nerves. He would scream on the microphone, yo baby, yo baby, yo. I hated that crap. It was stupid as hell. Alright, I'm looking at the time on my video because I don't want it to go much longer. So, Steve Austin retained the TV title. Up next, you had Cactus Jack defeat Heavy Metal Van Hammer. And then after the match, Van Hammer and Cactus brawled on the outside to the back. Up next, Ricky Steamboat returned to the WCW and was a mystery partner of Dustin Rhodes because Barry Windham could not wrestle. He had a broken hand. So his replacement was the returning Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He came down the ramp. He was wearing a giant dragon mask. He took it off, and it was revealed that it was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And he got a huge pop. The fans loved it, seeing Steamboat. The crowd went wild. And as I said, this was a great crowd at Clash of Champions 17. So the crowd went wild, and the tag match for the World Tag Team titles was very good. Dustin Rhodes and Ricky Steamboat challenged the World Tag Team Champions Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko. This was a great tag match. And Ricky Steamboat and Dustin Rhodes would pull out the victory and win the World Tag Team titles. The crowd went nuts. They loved it. But then later on, a month or two later, I think they stripped Ricky and Dustin because Ricky Steamboat wasn't supposed to be the original partner of Arn Anderson or something like that. Other matches, Brian Pillman defeated Johnny B. Bad. And the main event was the World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger defending the title against Rick Steiner. His brother Scott was with him. Scott Steiner had an injury, and he was still recovering from the injury. He was on the outside of the ring. And I believe Mr. Hughes and Harley Race were the managers, or Mr. Hughes was the bodyguard for Lex Luger, and Harley Race was the manager. I believe the referee threw them out from ringside. I think Harley Race got to stay at ringside. And Rick Steiner, I believe, suplexed Harley Race into the ring, punched him or clotheslined him, and then Harley fell to the outside anyways. Lex Luger retained the World Heavyweight Championship and defeated Rick Steiner. It was a pretty good match for whatever. I think it was only 9 or 10 minutes long, but it was a good world title match. Luger and Steiner had a good match. That was Clash of Champions 17. My next video, Part 4, 1991, I'll talk about Survivor Series and Halloween Havoc and WCW Starrcade 91 Battle Bold. Hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted it to be shorter. That's why I'm doing a Part 4. Hope you enjoyed Part 3 of the year in wrestling 1991. You know where I'm at on Twitter. It's at TNA WWE Guy. Follow me there. Bye for now.